Well, hello again. Nicole Abisinio here, continuing with soul ties, breaking unhealthy soul ties. Um, I left out a section that is crucial because I made the assumption that you guys already read Pure Power, which you may have not, or that you knew this, which again, you may not. When you're going to break these unholy soul ties, in the process, it's very important, if you have not done so, that you do and take the process of forgiveness very seriously. Now, forgiveness is something that can take a very long time. You can think you've forgiven someone, and it can go deeper and deeper. Sometimes I find that somebody I forgave years ago, there was still another layer of healing and of forgiveness in that. Even if you already on the top level, you don't wish them bad, you think that you've forgiven them, it can go very, very deep, and there are other things and spirits that are attached to that. Resentment is one, a spirit of bitterness, a spirit of judgment. And so that is a big part of the process, because if you go to break an unholy soul tie and have not done forgiveness, then you are probably not going to be able to break that cord. Forgiveness is something that is so crucial to have anything, to have your gifts working in Christ, to have power over the enemy, to advance in holiness. There's so much to forgiveness, and there's a lot about that in the Bible. I mean, Jesus is not messing around with that. It's not like, well, maybe forgive, or, I hope you forgive. It's you have to forgive. It is an absolute requirement that you forgive in order to be forgiven. So if you're trying to break the soul tie, and maybe you, like I said, if you've already been forgiven for that, then I'm assuming that you have done this work. But for those of you who have not, in my book, Pure Power. So even though that book is about breaking sexual sin and how to get out, it's got tons of stuff in there that applies to everything else. So there's a chapter just specifically on all the different steps to forgiveness. There's a chapter on prayer and how to pray, a chapter on fasting. So all of these things play into this. The soul ties, I wasn't even getting into anything about that, and I don't even really talk too much about it in the book. It doesn't come until chapter 6, but it's something that not everybody is ready for this level yet. And so it's better to do the videos, because I can answer questions, I can walk you guys through it. You guys will have spiritual direction, can go to your priests, pastors, ministry leaders, prayer team people, to help you with that along the way. So we didn't put it in the book just so that it's not, just to do it yourself, and that you will have guidance from someone as you're working on this process. So back to forgiveness. Yes, you have to forgive the other person. Okay, that's a given. But you also have to forgive yourself. That is something that I was really missing in when I was trying to do some of that work. Is you don't realize, when you're so busy forgiving other people, that you may hold things against yourself for whatever happened in that relationship. You may not have even forgiven yourself. If you're trying to be holy now and you're trying to walk with Christ, you may have not subconsciously forgiven the things that you did that were against God and the way that you've harmed him. And if you are struggling with sexual sin at this point, most likely the enemy's really on you about having guilt about what you're doing and about hurting God, or about hurting yourself or others, or not being holy, quote unquote, and all of these things. So really work on that time to forgive yourself. And again, do you have resentment against yourself? Are you judging yourself? Did you go to confession? This is really important, guys. Did you go to confession and God forgave you in confession, and then you still haven't forgiven yourself? That's almost also, pride. Like, okay, so God thinks you're good enough to forgive, but you don't think you're good enough to forgive. And that's something that can be, deep emotional wounds that the Lord wants to heal, and he wants to close those openings. But these are things that are really going to help when you're breaking soul ties with exes. I was recently talking to multiple people who were saying that they're still thinking of an ex. Again, that usually is a soul tie. I don't ever think about my exes. God bless them all. I'm not saying the good ones, the bad ones, and everything in between. You know, I only think about them when I'm trying, if there's anything from many, many years ago where like really, really horrific things were done, that I have to go back and, you know, really continue always giving that back over to the cross and making sure that, you know, that those wounds have become, you know, just scars like Jesus's wounds. You know, I love that you don't want them open, gaping wounds, but, you know, Jesus walks around with the scars of that crucifixion. So we're like him in that way if we're able to, you know, allow the Lord to heal those over, and then we just have remnants of it, and it helps us to help others in their journey. So another one is forgiving God. Now, amazingly, we can be angry with another person. We can be angry, and that's another spirit that works together. So just remember, these demons, they work together, and they work in groups. There's different groups that work together. So oftentimes those unforgiveness, it can also be a spirit of anger, spirit of wrath. And you can really feel that, and you'll feel that anger in your body, which can also be bracing and holding on to that soul tie with that other person through the bad feelings that you have towards them, or any spirit of vengeance, for example, which you definitely want to get rid of. Vengeance is his. God always takes care of all this stuff. I've been through so much, and I don't have to lift a finger for the Lord to take care of it. And I'm actually, you know, God's brought me to a place where I actually want to heap blessings on the exes or bad, anybody that stalked me or people that did bad things to me, that, you know, I want them to be well, and I want them to find the Lord, and I try to focus on that instead, or even offering up my suffering that they caused me, you know, for the salvation of their soul, is an amazing, amazing way to break soul ties, guys. It's so powerful. The enemy cannot resist, like he has to flee from love. God's love, not necessarily our human love, loving the person. In fact, not that at all, but God's love through us. There's a great forgiveness exercise, and I'm gonna, before I tell you the forgiveness exercise, let me finish about forgiving God. This is something that I didn't even realize that I had, and I've noticed this, you know, in other people. Some people are very aware that they're angry with God and that they don't like the way that he handles things, and they stay in that anger, and they stay focused on that anger, and they know that they're mad that God didn't answer their prayer or didn't take care of them. But for me, I think because some of the things that happened to me were, you know, atrocities that I was around, was when I was so young. Like, I'm talking 8 or 9 years old, when for me, I had a soul tie with the man that sexually abused my best friend. And I didn't realize that that was there. And I didn't realize that you know, had I forgiven him, had I forgiven myself, because there was a great, unfortunately, when loved ones are abused, even as a small child, you have that feeling where you wanted to do something to help, and you weren't able to help. And that is other spirits that are attached to that: spirits of powerlessness, spirits of hopelessness, spirits of helplessness, and even can lead to spirits of worthlessness, where those things can enter in on all of this, and those relationships and those soul ties that you're trying to break. But I had not, it took me a long time of realizing, wow, like I was really mad at God for that. I had blocked it out of my mind that I had separated from God because I had felt that he hadn't protected my 8-year-old best friend, and he had abused tons of kids in the school. I've talked about this story a bit. And I only got away because my mom was a child abuse investigator and had like slammed this stuff into my head. So when he came after me, I was able to get away, but I didn't know that he was after other people. And, you know, that came out very shortly after. But again, forgiving God, I really had to do, and I had to work on. And, you know, God is always with us. Jesus is always with us. He loves us so much, and he's walking with us. And it is getting to that higher level of understanding of why bad things happen to good people, which is, probably the next talk that I'm going to give. So I won't get too much into that in this, and I'll work with you guys through that in the next talk, because I want to give you this forgiveness exercise. I did this with a wonderful FSSP priest. You know who you are. He's humble, so he doesn't, always want, he does never want his name mentioned. But early in my journey, when I, first converted, I was fighting these devil worshippers. He went through forgiveness exercises with me to make sure that I had, done all of those. And that, there wasn't anything in that area holding me back. And he walked me through this. I remember we were sitting in the church together, and he had the prayers on his iPad, which is funny because he's an FSS traditional priest, but he did everything on his iPad. And he basically gave me the exercise of closing your eyes, and you pretend that you're in a room with Jesus, and you and Jesus are in this room, and you start to bring in, walk going backwards from the most recent person that you need to forgive to the way, 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 family when you were a kid, things when you were very, very young. But start new, start with things that were, less of, major things. Start with smaller things that you need to forgive people for. But you're in this room, and you bring in each person. And as you bring in each person, you visualize them coming in, and you give them a hug, and you forgive them. And then you hand them over to Jesus. You give them over to Jesus to take them from there. And it's such a beautiful, wonderful exercise, and it is so extraordinarily powerful. I've done it in my conferences. I did a great conference in Pittsburgh where I showed everybody how to do this. I did it in one conference where we spent, a long time doing this, where everybody was able to quietly meditate with really beautiful Christian music. But it's powerful, and you will see so many healings after doing this. So now, don't get freaked out when in your visualization, if there's someone that you haven't forgiven that you didn't realize, or that they did really, really bad things to you. And I had this, so don't feel bad or feel like you're a bad Christian. I had this early in my journey on this path. Was, man, when I went to hug them, instead I just was yelling at them, in the vision, spiritually in this exercise. Or I was, back at that time, I was, punching them, I was kicking them, I was, so mad, or, I didn't want to give them to Jesus, or I wouldn't even talk to them, I wouldn't give them a hug. I mean, there's so many different things. So, but what's amazing about the exercise is you'll see, and you'll be more aware through it, who you haven't forgiven, if anybody, and to what degree are you feeling these, negative emotions. But anyways, this is wonderful that I'm able to share this with you. So if you've been breaking soul ties, I know you guys have been awesomely watching the videos. If there's any other questions that you have, but I think this is going to be a really big one to help you if you were working on that process and you had written down all the names and you had broken them. If you feel like something's still there with someone, this would be a big reason. And I already talked to you about some of the other smaller reasons, but forgiveness is, usually top of the list if something's not breaking. So thank you guys very, very much. Again, just loving the support and the community that is being created here. And feel free to talk amongst yourselves too. It's really cool what's happening. So I will see you soon as I talk about a little bit more from this session in another talk. All right, God bless. Bye-bye.